Hey there friends, and welcome to Laugh Napkin. My name is Frank, and today we're going to be looking at the subreddit r/MaliciousCompliance. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. To preface this story, I work in a grocery store. This isn't just any grocery store. This is one of the busier stores in the entire district, with my specific department being the busiest department in our store. Most people who come to this department quickly move to another, because our work is back to back with no downtime in between. I pride myself on being a hard worker no matter what. I always strive to learn more, do more, be more. I make myself a necessary asset because it gives me a lot of influence. In my department, I'm a part-timer, but I do just as much work as our department's managers. Without me, the department would be well screwed, because no other part-timer is willing to do the work I do. What exactly do I do that other part-timers don't? I place orders, adjust inventory, handle DSD, direct store delivery receiving, KLT, known loss tracking, markdowns, 5 a.m. shifts to hang tags, 5 a.m. shifts to deep clean vital sections, overnights on holiday weekends, NCAP planning and changing, etc. It's a lot of work, way more than I should be doing, but the benefits is that all the managers know how much I do and leave me the hell alone. All managers except Kay. I'm gonna call her Karen. Karen is our front-end manager. We also have a main perishable manager, assistant store manager, and store manager. She's a mean-spirited person who is awful at her job. She never pays attention to what other departments are doing. Hence, she doesn't realize how vital I am to our department, but she insists on acting like she does. I've heard multiple complaints from others in my department that Karen tells them that they're slacking and need to get more work done. I know full well this isn't the case, and she just wants someone to complain to. One day, I'm on break. We get 2 15-minute breaks and 1 30-minute lunch. I decide to combine my 2 15s into 1 half-hour break, because my grandmother recently broke her rib and I was trying to coordinate with family about who could take care of her and when. Karen walks back into the break room once, and then again later. She makes some sly comment about me taking my break so early in my shift, so I explained to her that it wasn't early at all and thought nothing of it. I guess Karen didn't like my tone of voice or something, because an hour later she calls me into the office. Turns out she had checked the cameras in the break room and caught me taking an extended break. Before I even had a chance to speak, she went on a rant about how the department looks like garbage, and it must be my fault since she caught me doing this. The department looked awful because my manager didn't order enough product. There's nothing I can do about that. I finally was able to speak and tried explaining to her that I only combined my 2 breaks into 1. She asked if I knew I wasn't supposed to do that, which I told her I did. "Well then," she said, "if you know you shouldn't be doing it, then just don't do it in the first place." Game, set, match. I wanted so badly to execute my malicious compliance immediately, but I knew the bigger, badder managers would be in tomorrow, along with her, and I knew that they would absolutely rip her a new a-hole for what I was about to do. I took the time to write out my new availability on paper. No more overnights, check. No more hanging tags or cleaning, check. I also wrote down my request for a $2 pay raise if they'd like me to continue doing all the other things the other part-timers don't have to do, along with a list of exactly what those responsibilities were. I went over to the manager's office and saw Karen sitting alone. Perfect. I said nothing and simply handed her the paper. She looked confused at first and asked me what this was. I explained to her that those are all the things I shouldn't be doing, since I'm not getting paid for them and they aren't part of my job description being just a part-timer. I've never seen a look of pure despair on a person's face until that day. She first got angry at me and told me that I shouldn't be overblowing things. When it was clear that her being angry with me was only making my moment sweeter, she tried reasoning with me. Really, this was just her re-explaining why I was wrong in nicer words. I wasn't having any of it. I told her that we could have a meeting with the other managers to discuss it if she'd like. Not to my surprise, she declined that offer. Shortly thereafter, I was questioned by the other managers separately why I was doing this. I explained how she checked the cameras on me during my extended break, and told them all about our conversation where she accused me of being responsible for the state of our departments. The assistant store manager directly told me that she shouldn't have done what she did, that she would talk to her, and that if she ever even bothered me again, that I should immediately notify one of the other managers. Since that day, Karen has been nothing but an angel to me. That $2 raise was pretty sweet too. There's nothing like a sweet story about an employee getting one over on their manager. Well played, OP. Hit that like button if you agree. On to the next story. I've worked in aviation for nearly 20 years, from small airports to large commercial hubs. Like any industry, it's full of type A personalities and those promoted up to their respective level of incompetence. To protect those involved, I won't name the airport or the company I worked for. At the time this story occurred, I had worked my way up in a company that is contracted to pump the fuel into the aircraft at one of the busiest airports in the US. My job was a supervisor in charge of fuel quality and safety adherences. The airport I worked at was growing. It went from middle of the pack to being in the top 10 for total operations in about 3 years. As such, there was and still is a lot of construction going on in order to have more gates and parking areas. This has involved restriping the gates and adding more jet bridges onto the existing terminal. This usually is a pain, but works for the most part when there's only so much room to work with. For fueling, a hydrant system is commonly used, as it's far faster and more convenient than having tanker trucks go up to every single plane. Instead, a piece of equipment is staged at each gate and hooks up to a pit in the ground, where fuel is delivered directly from the storage tanks and can be pumped into the plane. These are large underground pipes, and once in place, are rarely, if ever, moved. If you move your gate, that pit stays put, and isn't as conveniently located as it first was. Might be too far away from the plane, might be under the plane, etc. When the airport authority decided to add a new gate at the end of a terminal, I was invited to the meeting thanks to my position. I guess I was expected to just sit and nod or something, since every time I pointed out that the new gate would put the pit under the jet or on the wrong side, I was basically told, "We'll make it work," or "This is the only way we can do it." After being shut down a few times, I gave up. 4 months of construction to expand the passenger waiting area and attach a jet bridge brings us to the first day of use. There's a ribbon cutting ceremony, and the first arrival is brought into the gate. The fueler calls me because he doesn't like how he has to run his hoses and wants me to sign off on his solution. I pull up and see that the pit is under the left engine. 737 fuel panel is on the right wing. So he has to run the pit hose under the fuselage, which is full of passengers. This hose is a 3-inch inner diameter and is capable of delivering around 800 gallons per minute. Equipment slows that down as appropriate per aircraft. Should a tug or anything hit that line, it'll get bad, and fast. I say there's no way we can use that pit, and there isn't another one we can choose from. I advise the airline, and they say, "Use a truck then." I respond, "We can't. The jet is within 20 feet of a wall of the terminal, and we can't get a truck in front. If we're behind the jet, we'll block the taxi lane, and no aircrafts are getting in and out of 8 gates. We can't safely fuel an aircraft at this gate." Well, you can imagine how this went over. Within 15 minutes, I have the highest level person in town for the airline, the airport duty manager, who brought a couple of airport police with him for some reason, my GM, the manager for the baggage loaders, all at the gates. I explain the issue and state that I will not allow fueling as it isn't safe to run pressurized jet fuel under an aircraft and that the pit is underneath the engine itself. Both of these violate numerous regulations. My GM looks at it and agrees. The airline head starts yelling, and the duty manager says he'll have the fire department come look, and if they say it's good, we're responsible to fuel. Fire battalion chief comes up, hears the issue, and walks over to look. He then gets a rolling wheel measure and walks it from the pit to the building, and then back to his truck. He comes back with a red tag and puts the pit permanently out of service, as it was too close to the building. He tells everyone that he sees that there is no way to legally fuel at that gate, as it's too close to the building, and the fuel truck would block the fire escape path. For the next 2 months, the airline used the gate as overflow with no fuel, meaning that they had to bring the plane in with enough fuel already, or fuel it out on a cargo stand. Then it was cordoned off and demolished. Then old lines were restored. Not sure how many millions that cost, but it had to be a few. I just can't get the saying, measure twice, cut once out of my head. I bet those head honchos wish they had listened to OP when they were tearing down the new terminal to rebuild it. Anyway, on to the next one. I worked at Netflix for a few months, from August last year to February this year. It was customer service, so it was basically a crap load of elderly people calling for various stupid reasons. One thing that happened constantly was people opening accounts by accident and not closing them. Most often it was an old person who forgot their password, so instead of recovering it, they would just make a new account each time it happened. The policy when I worked there was if they had watched even a minute of Netflix on an account, we could only refund the last 3 months charged no matter the age of the account. If they hadn't watched Netflix, we could credit up to 6 months. If they had a single minute of Netflix used in the past month, we were only allowed to credit 1 month, and no refund at all if they tried to cancel within a week of their billing dates. We also were told not to refund anything if we weren't explicitly asked for a refund. My last week at that job, I didn't care about their rules much. If someone forgot they paid for Netflix or seemed genuine or like it was a true mistake, I'd just refund as much as the system would allow me to credit, even if it was technically going against our rules, the full 6 months. So one day in the last week, I have some old man calling. He inadvertently made a new account for each device he had for Netflix, so he had like 5 or 6 accounts, each were near daily use. He was generally pleasant, so I decided I'd offer him as much as the system would allow, instead of the 1 month that we were supposed to do if asked. So I tell him that I can credit back the last 6 months of each of the accounts he wishes to cancel. This causes him to become livid. I had these effing accounts for over a year, and you're going to gosh dang refund me for the full amount I'm owed. And stuff like that was being spewed at me for the next minute or so. Eventually, he demands to talk to my manager, because he thinks that they'll be able to refund him the full amounts. The fun part now is the supervisors follow every rule to the word. So I had the pleasure of getting my supervisor on the line, who ended up telling him that they could only refund a max of 1 month per account, so he lost out on 5 months per account of possible refund money. All because he decided to act like a jerk and throw a tantrum. I'll be honest, I kind of feel for the old guy. I know he was a jerk and a big meanie, but if he really didn't know you can use one account on multiple devices and ended up paying separately for 6 devices for a year, that just plain sucks. I would have wanted my entire accounts refunded as well. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed today's video. Hit that like button if you smiled at least once. Leave a comment for good karma, and if you're new here, consider subscribing to help me buy tacos. And I will see you tomorrow.